swords.
Take this time to consider your past deeds.
Stop asking questions. You had your chance. Let the games begin.
Hello and welcome to Velen's Chosen. We're ready to buff your game. We exist to help budget players stay competitive on the ladder and end every season just a bit higher than the last one, no matter what your card pool.
Drag no, stupid.
Oh, wow.
So, that sounds so good.
I hate
All right,
to disagree.
so we have a few people on our show today. So our first person is your host, me. I'm NotRobMay, aka Twick in the game. Joining me today, we have Evemartyn, as usual.
Hello.
And sadly, Andrew can't join us, but in his place, we have the man, the myth, the acidic legend, Noxious himself.
Yeah, how are you doing, guys? I'm pretty happy to be here, honestly. It's not every day that you get invited on the podcast, necessarily, which is pretty nice. I wish there were more of them around Hearthstone, I feel.
Yeah.
Do you really? Because
There's
I feel
a lot
like
of
Yeah,
them
there's
out
a lot
there
of
now.
them,
There's
but
a lot.
there's a lot of them, but I feel like a lot of them don't necessarily they don't have a niche, necessarily, and I feel like you have too many of them that are too general, maybe, in what they're focusing on, right? So they all kind of do the same thing, right? And it's nice to see something a bit more specific, which is, I think, the way that podcasts, should be made usually, right? Is they kind of figure out what they want to talk about as a main topic, and they keep just reinventing the wheel every episode around that topic.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we try to do, so we think
Yeah.
we're a pretty big believer in that.
Yeah.
All right, so top of the show, why don't we just introduce yourself, Noxious? Like, tell us who you are, what you do in the Hearthstone community, just some of the cool stuff that you have been doing lately, even.
Oh man, so well, I'm a streamer, commentator, YouTube content producer. I don't even know at this stage. Like, I basically do a bit of everything in Hearthstone at this point.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because I never really thought I'd get into casting, but then it came up, and I never really thought I'd get into YouTube, and that's it was kind of a hobby initially, and then that was a pretty big thing over time. It kept growing and growing, and then streaming. Somebody told me I should start, and I did. But these days, I think I do constant YouTube production, regular streams, more or less, and a lot of casting.
Yeah, sweet. So how did you get hooked in with maybe some of your sponsors or people that you represent in the Hearthstone community?
So I'm affiliated with Complexity, so I'm on that team, and as a result of that, all the sponsors that come through them, I'm endorsing as well, obviously. When it comes to personal sponsorships, there have been very few of them. Possibly next year there'll be more. This year there's G2A, I think, that pretty much sponsored everybody. So as far as that goes, they pretty much just approach you and tell you, hey, do you want to put us on your stream? And you're like, yeah, I guess so. I mean, sponsorship-wise, getting on Complexity was an interesting thing because I think initially they had other people in mind, and I wasn't meant to be picked up as a pro player, right? Like, they picked me up as a featured personality, if anything, and it was an interesting proposition because I never really thought anybody would pick up a featured personality. Like, it just didn't seem to me like a pro team would need somebody like that.
Now you're stationed in Canada, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you're probably pretty familiar with Gamers Origin that Purple is affiliated with, right?
Yeah, I am. I was actually streaming on their platform just this morning.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
So you're fluent in French then?
Absolutely, it's my native language. English is the
Nice.
second thing I picked up as I played too much Final Fantasy. It's kind of how that's how it happened. True story.
That's funny.
Well,
Yeah, I guess from what I've heard, one of our good friends, Vincent, who we had guest on one of our earlier shows, said that he missed a fireside gathering that I guess you were helping put on locally in his area.
Absolutely,
so I thought that was funny.
Yeah, it was. It happened, I think, 2 months or so ago at this point, if I recall. There were a lot of people, but the problem, I think, is that the organization itself was not up to the level that I would have loved it to be, since, we had this tournament organized and everything, and then we didn't have admins. Like, the infrastructure to support a tournament wasn't there, but I was supposed to cast, and then I ended up trying to just get it all together, and kind of wing it, but you can't wing a tournament. Like, it doesn't work like that, right? So maybe
I think
another
there's a lot
time
of
we'll get it better.
enthusiasm out there for more things for people to do in Hearthstone, but a lot of bugs still to be worked out.
There's a whole lot of people that just don't have any sort of like tournament setup experience. Realistically, I think it's really tough to do as long as it's not a part of the culture of your community.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
and
I never really
especially
thought of it
when
that
you want to
way.
do like, you have like card shops and stuff that are trying to set up, Magic the Gathering tournaments. Those guys are like legit tournament setups, and then you have them like, hey, could you do a fireside gathering for us? It's like, well, we don't have computers at a card shop, even though you want to play a card game. You have to have everybody bring like devices, and then you have to ask the store owners if they have Wi-Fi, and they have a bunch of people hopefully not crashing the network. It's like, it's a pretty big undertaking, which is why I think a lot of, like bars and more restaurant type places, or even like internet cafes, are the ones that are ended up, places that you have to go for fireside gatherings, and it's tough for local players to be there.
Yeah, I mean, we have like this afternoon. Actually, it's funny. I have a really busy day. Like I streamed for Geo this morning, then I'm on the podcast, and right afterwards there is an event in Montreal, in a gaming bar that we have. So yeah, I think these places are the best. Like renting a venue just for a fireside can be pretty costly, and so as a result of that, it's just usually better to go at a place that offers a connection, right? So you don't have to actually get everything together. People bring their own devices. It's pretty much accepted at this point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll be interested because Blizzard has basically stated they're going to be aggressively pursuing more and more fireside gatherings this year, with the help of Liquid Hearth's website and their own fireside gathering search engine. So it should be pretty good. I just found one locally for myself that I've been a part of that's been pretty fun, but it's anywhere between 6 to 12 people regular is pretty tough to increase. So
I wonder what the chances are of there being one in my area. It's kind of pretty small town area. I might have to go drive out to a bigger city in order to find a gathering.
Yeah. So, Noxious, what do you think after all of this stuff is kind of finally dropped in the game? We have 2 very large expansions of cards, plus the classic set that we started with in beta. And then we have our 3rd adventure that just finished up last week. What do you think budget players are going to be really starting to see moving forward in this?
I honestly, like, I wish I
Saturated.
could tell you what Blizzard's gonna do about it, right? Because it's obviously a topic that they're having to deal with internally, just to think about. What do we do about the card pool? How do we allow players to get more rewards without cheating the existing player base, right? Because sometimes, I mean, I think it's a faulty logic, very faulty logic, but I think some people feel like they've been cheated when other people get stuff, right? They say, oh, I worked hard for that thing.
Yeah.
It's like back in my day, we used to go to the well to get water. You can just keep your, your running water to yourself. We shouldn't have that. It's
Walked
it's
uphill
distorted
to
thinking.
school both ways.
Exactly,
When
right?
you make
Like, it's
that
completely
analogy,
distorted.
it sounds really silly, yeah.
It is
Welcome to
silly.
Reddit.
It is absolutely silly. But that's the way people sometimes identify, I guess. The problem might be for Blizzard to try to pass it off as something a little milder, which is why they've been increasing, daily quests gradually, slowly. And that's a method they can eventually make that entry level a lot easier without necessarily, giving you a massive, patch that just changes the cost of older card packs. So it's a nice way to do it.
Giving
Yeah,
you a
and then
card
they
back
had the
for
introduction.
Brawl.
Tavern Brawl, right.
Yeah.
True.
So,
And
just
then
trying
they
to
had
think
the
of, like-
recent sale, right? That's kind of the first time it's happened.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, that
This
was
is
a
the first
funny
sale
one, though.
outside of Amazon, right?
I
Is this
think
the
so.
first sale that they've ever had
Yeah, I
besides
think
the
so.
TGT pre-release?
They
I
they
think
really
so.
butchered the marketing of it. I don't know if you recall.
I saw that video you made of it.
Yeah,
I
it
laughed
was
really hard. It was
hilarious.
funny.
But I mean, the idea itself is pretty clever in that it does give people a good timing. If they ever thought on spending money on Hearthstone, then they can sometimes find better deals throughout the year, knowing that maybe people will actually start saving up that otherwise wouldn't, just because they're gonna get more bang for their buck.
Yeah, I know I took advantage of it this week just because I got a Christmas bonus at work. So I was like, it's only $40 if I do it on Amazon and I get 10 more packs. Why not? So
Yeah.
I'm going
See
to
some
wait
more
until
dust.
after Christmas to see how things shake out and if I have the money.
I was going to do that initially, but that Christmas bonus was super tempting. So, all right. So, I mean, I guess what is your overall impressions of what Blizzard has done thus far for that budget pool? I mean, and obviously Noxious has been shifting, right? Like we just mentioned, but what do you think of it overall, like from start to finish, how they've been doing?
I think they have good intentions, right? That's the biggest thing. But I think ultimately, the more cards are released, and they will keep releasing cards, the bigger the problem becomes. So it's not one that you can really just tackle with. You'd have to increase the amount of gold gain or pack gain at the same rate that you release stuff, which effectively nullifies the point of even releasing stuff. Because then, why would anybody pay for those things if you're giving too much of the reward out? What you're running into, though, I think, is the cost of adventures are a really big gateway for new players. And usually, though, because of the way adventures are structured, they're so important to your collection that you almost, if you're going to put money in the game, you're going to put it in in the adventure modes, right? Like you want Nax, right. You want League of Explorers, of course. And so Blizzard, by releasing maybe adventures that have a very high impact in the cards that they offer, they are forcing, or not necessarily forcing, but incentivizing new players to get a lot of cards for cheap, right? Because $25 for what, like 45 different cards that you're getting, I think? Like, that's pretty cheap, considering they're all different. You're getting 2 copies of them, and you can get, the card back and everything. So the value you get out of adventures is amazing, and maybe just because of that, Blizzard will just keep releasing more of adventures. That's what I think is the best way for them
and legendaries that are otherwise quite hard for new players to get in the game.
I think League of Explorers in particular has been one of the greatest expansion things that they've done for new players. Because, people are like, oh, it costs $20, blah, blah, blah. It's like, do you realize that this expansion has $5 less of a difference to start with? And secondly, it offers almost, it actually offers 31 unique cards and 30 unique cards of the previous ones, and 45 with this one. And then all of the total cards goes from 56, 57 to 85 cards total. And you're getting usable legendaries from every wing. That's pretty good.
Yeah, the usable part, I think, is really the important one, right? Because if you look at BRM, like, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but Blackrock Mountain was a huge disappointment. Because even though we did get cards that were cool, even like getting a dragon deck together with just adventures is just not realistic. Like, you still need a Azure Drake, which you would get anyway. You probably still need Twilight Drake from the core set. Ysera, you're probably going to go fetch. So the adventures on their own do not enable dragon decks, because you still have to try to get the Twilight Guardian in TGT. Like, there's a lot of stuff you have to find. And that's maybe why
they're rare cards and epic cards too.
Right.
Yeah.
So, man,
they're quite expensive. I mean, I love the Dragon Priest. It's one of my favorite decks to play, but it's definitely not a budget deck.
Yeah, it rivals Wallet Warrior,
I think. Into that. Yeah, the Wallet Warrior.
Yeah, it rivals it, I think, as far as it's probably the second most expensive deck that you have to play, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one.
But there's different levels. There are budget decks out there that are very viable as well. I mean, to say, I can't play the Dragon Priest, but I can play these 5 other decks. I think it's kind of okay as long as there are a lot of viable decks that budget players do have access to and can make and play.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah. And it's what's hard is, like, you can have viable decks as kind of your catchphrase, but ultimately you're trying to become a player that's coming out into good deck building skills and starting to come into the territory where you're not only trying to make a viable deck and pull it off the internet, but try to make a deck and tweak it so that you're kind of on the upper curve of the meta in order to climb.
So having more tools, I guess, that's a tricky part, right? Because doing that on the budget can be a bit tougher, and so you have to really optimize the way you spend your dust, the way you spend your gold, and everything. And that's that's something that I haven't had to struggle with, but because I've talked to so many people, I realized how big of a deal it was. I ended up making a spreadsheet a while back, complete spreadsheet with gold acquisition, the rate at which you can get your stuff, and I'm planning to make the next step something like break it down to all the usables or the must-haves, and then tell people how long it takes to get those.
Yeah, that's a pretty big undertaking too.
It changes as well. I mean, the cards that are really good, the cards that are really needed to tech into the meta changes every week. Right now, it's just crazy. It's not.
There's so many viable cards in the meta right now. It's absurd.
Yeah, you just can't tech against this meta. You can't. there is no one deck that is kind of viable to go up against every different kind of thing out there.
Yeah, if you want to know what tech cards to put in the meta, you go into Asia and you just watch people play on Asia server because they love tech cards over there, and they're like eating up Reno Warlock and Reno decks because it lets them play all their tech cards that they like.
You know, that makes a
Oh my
lot of
gosh.
sense. That's a very good observation. I never really thought about it that way, but it's true. You can basically put, your MC Tech, your BGH, your Kazan Mystic, if you really want to
Brand
push it.
Bronzebeard.
Everything, man. Like, everything goes in Reno. Any Reno deck is going to be basically enabling, just about all the tech cards in the world if you want to put them in.
Yeah, like you can literally run an Ooze and Harrison in your deck that has Reno in it and have like full logic for doing so.
Yeah.
It makes it super fun, and I think Reno kind of makes it easier for new players to make a deck because they don't have to
without a
have
doubt.
two ofs. They don't have to have all these every card. They can
You can
kind
play
put in
Cone of
everything
Cold
that they
again.
have.
What?
Oh, man. Who
How
would have
hype.
thought?
But
I
then
dusted my one Cone of Cold.
on the other side, for the people who are trying to figure out what the meta is so that they can do the grind to legend, it is impossible. You have no idea what this person is going to have in their deck. You have no idea how to play around. Is that a
you
good
do.
thing?
I mean, that's the issue that I have with
Yeah.
Reno, right? Like, I wrote an article, I'm pretty sure,
That was a really long article.
was it? Really?
Yeah, it was pretty
Okay.
long.
I didn't realize it. It felt pretty short when I wrote it. I was like, yeah, that's way too short. I don't think anybody's going to like it. Okay, sure. So it ended up being
Well,
too
you can
long.
talk about it on the show.
Rob
Go
just
for it.
doesn't like to read.
Hey,
Right.
just because I can't read doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, you had the choice between doing a podcast or writing a book. We know where you stood. Which explains quite a bit.
Those who can't podcast right.
yeah,
And
that's
those who
pretty
can't do
much
both
it.
stream.
Well played,
boy.
sir. Well played. Oh, shots fired.
So, anyway, do you, in the end, I mean, I know we're all trying to get to Legends, so it's frustrating that way. But do you believe that this shakeup in the meta is actually a good thing, or would you rather it kind of eventually shook out into certain card decks that were more predictable?
That's a tough one. I mean, I feel like I'd rather the metagame was always shifting, obviously, just because it's more interesting to watch or to play even. The issue you have is that I think the issue I have is fundamentally with the way the ladder system is structured, and that is
That's
the
a
reason
good
I may
point.
have something, against
Yeah.
the whole metagame instability, is that you really almost can't, I don't want to say can't do anything, but you're at like RNG's whim. Sometimes you'll queue up into good matchups back to back and everything goes super
Yeah.
well, and then the next time you play, it's an absolute like elo hell basically. Like it's
Yeah.
so unstable.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's really hard to make any progress because there are no decks that are good against all decks. So, I don't know. I
wonder if
guess
they
the better
tightened
player
up
you
the-
are, the more you can do with the cards that you have.
Yeah.
But
What do you
yeah,
think about like
sometimes
tightening
it's
up
just Race
ranked
Hunter.
play, like and maybe eliminating the bottom 5 from 20 to 25, or the bottom 10 to making it like 15 is the bottom rank.
I think
then
you're
just having it-
congregating people like all in the same bunch. I mean, I don't know. Were
Yeah,
you around in the
I don't
beta,
know that
right?
that's-
Do you remember that? Do you remember the
Yeah,
master
I was really
system?
frustrated in beta.
Okay,
I
so
didn't
here's
play
the
a whole
deal.
lot in beta.
The way that the old system worked is you couldn't D rank, right? Like once you got a win, you got a star, and that star was never going away, no matter what.
Okay.
What that did is everybody was eventually max rank, right? Everybody was master 3
Sure.
stars, which meant, hey, I'm the best. But then that also meant that people who played at the top played anything, because once they had that master 3 stars, they just start
It
playing
didn't matter.
fun decks. Like they actually play fun decks because there's no reason to just play to win. Like you don't need to maintain that ranking to get BlizzCon points, yada yada. Whereas right now you're running into the issue of having a casual mode that's a practice mode for ranked, and then you go to ranked, and it's the same thing all the way through. Honestly, like the difficulty might increase a bit, but honestly it's just a very long path to the top, and it's mostly the same decks. Which means that effectively the ranking, as you said, doesn't matter too much, and you could eliminate a good chunk of it and concentrate everyone together. Like, you wouldn't even notice it, since it's always the same decks, is what I feel.
Yeah.
So you don't think the keeping your stars worked?
I think keeping your stars was silly in that competitive players have no way to measure whether or not they're good, right? Because you
Okay.
never D-rank. But the
Unless
issue
you were just
is
keeping track
now-
of your own wins and losses.
Exactly. But if you're doing the current system, then suddenly there's no way for you to play non-meta decks. There's absolutely nowhere for you to do that. Uh, so I don't know. I feel like the shift in the current meta is a good example of one of the drawbacks that in a very wide ladder system has, where there's no rules on what you can play, what you can't play, bans, best of threes, yada yada, that you'd see in a tournament format, and you're random queuing into people that have anything from a Murloc Priest to a Miracle Rogue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I don't really like. Okay, so I don't really mind, I guess, necessarily the ranked system, as it were. But like, what I don't like is the fact that when you want to become a professional or you want to start making it into the tournament scene, like playing in tournaments and playing in formats and what have you is very different, like you were saying. And so if I hit legend, like let's say I'll just use Zalay from Archon as an example. The dude crushes ladder, right? He hits top one. 6-0 hits top one in the first couple days of ladder being released of the season, and just like those guys are just crazy. But then you go and see like their tournament scene, and they're relatively successful, but they're not like top tier type players. You know what I mean? Like they finish really high on ladder and they do their thing, but when they get in the tournament scene, it's a whole nother ball game. But like, why isn't Hearthstone giving players that want to start competing a competing atmosphere that's consistent with what they're doing in the professional scene or what they want people to ultimately get to?
It's one of the gripes I have with the absence of a tournament system in the game, right? Like back in beta, we kept pushing the devs to support esports, give us spectator mode.
Right.
Not even beta, never mind alpha. What am I talking about? Back in alpha, we told them this is going to be esports. You have to add spectator. You have to add tournament mode. You have to yada yada. And they kept saying, well, this is not an esports. This is, a fun card game, and our intent is not to make it an esport. And it's funny that they said that. Because afterwards they said, well, we're going to take it where the community wants it to go. And then they made the spectator mode. Still no tournament mode. They said that Tavern Brawl was in development at the same time as the tournament mode, and that the tournament didn't make it. Instead, Tavern Brawl did, which means they did keep in mind that casual players needed a place to go. But ultimately, I feel like not having that lobby in the game is a really big detriment to, I guess, getting better, as you said, as a competing player.
That's why people are just like hopping in Reddit or Facebook groups, and they're trying to get players that are somewhat equal caliber or better caliber players than they are, and just saying, hey, let's ignore the ladder and let's go scrim. And you got people that are like ranked 12 on the ladder or even ranked 20, and then they go into like a BlizzCon qualifier. It's because they just don't care about the ladder. They've been practicing at fireside gatherings, been going to tournaments, and getting BlizzCon points the other way.
Yeah. Usually,
so
though,
it's effectively
they get
removing the ladder.
Yeah, they usually get legend if they really care. Like JJ, for instance, has a practice group with Tice, I think, and RDU, and like they still crush the ladder, but they don't care about it as much as other players would. They care for the points, but not as much for the high rank itself.
Yeah, and like the way they've reworked the points system, we haven't really talked too much on the show because it's kind of not relevant for our viewers. But I mean, the point system is so weird now. Like them hitting legend and getting 1 point's kind of like, yay. Like
I could be wrong because I don't know that much about it, but I think the way that they're looking at tournament mode is that they don't want to kind of squelch the community's creativity. And the way that we decide to set things up and set tournaments up, if they made a tournament mode, it would kind of be like, okay, this is the way it is now. This is the way Blizzard has done it, and this is the way it's going to be. But if they leave it up to us to plan tournaments and do it ourselves, then it's kind of open to whatever neat ideas people can think up of and what ways that they want to do it.
Okay,
yeah, but they could kind of make their own settings in it, so they can kind of basically make it so that it's a community-driven function
it's
in
a
the
custom,
game, as opposed
like
to something.
A custom lobby, right? As opposed to
right.
Because the problem we have right now is that when you hit play, right, on ranked, you basically go in the ladder without any, like, you can't say I want to play a best of 3 conquest, no ban. Like, you don't have that option. It's literally queue up, play one deck, one match against one guy, and lose or win stars based on your performance. Whereas in a custom lobby, and that's why I think the word custom tournament, the insistence on the custom is important, because if you just do blanket conquest no ban tournaments, then that's all you're gonna get to do, and that's gonna get really dull really fast. If, however, I can choose to play Last Hero Standing, Conquest, get a ban, then suddenly it's a very different tournament model in the game itself.
I'm sure they're working on it, and I'm sure it's a lot harder, like on the technical side, to be able to make it understandable by new players, which seems to be a really big important thing for them. You know, people just getting into Hearthstone, picking up the game for things to be easily understandable and put on the iPad and the iPhone and your computer and all these different things. But if there is a need for it and people keep asking for it, they generally listen to their community.
Yeah, they're usually really good about that. Even people
So
whining
I'm sure they're
incessantly
working on
on
it.
places.
They've learned.
Sure, it's one of
They've
their
learned to
priorities.
listen.
Yeah,
Yes. Through all their other games.
yeah. So Eve, why don't you grab one of the questions from show notes and ask Noxious one of the ones that kind of appeals to you.
Let's see. What was
We
the
have quite
first
a few in
class you
here.
remember trying to get good at? What was one
Oh,
of your
wow.
favorites?
It's got to be Priest, right? Just because it's such a fun class. Like, just conceptually, it was probably one of my favorite classes. As soon as it got spoiled back in Alpha, I was like, yeah, this is the class I'm going to focus on. There was, back then, Mind Vision used to steal a card from your hand. So, that was pretty annoying. It would literally take it. So,
Oh,
I mean,
take it
Mind-
away?
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
It didn't copy, like it took
Oh my
it.
God.
So Mind Vision was 6 mana though, right? You spend 6 mana, you steal it from their hand.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
like a discard mechanic without being a discard mechanic. And it felt
Dang.
frustrating to lose your combo pieces. So Blizzard said, yeah, never mind. If we're not going to put discard, we're not going to put you steal my stuff from my hand. Like, you can steal it while it's on the board,
Yeah.
then it's all yours. But don't touch it if
Yeah.
I haven't played it. Basically. So they did that, and Priest felt so cool because
sad.
it was Mind Games, Thought Steal, Mind Vision, Shadow Madness, like everything, which was
Just
actually
steal
called
your
Dark
opponent's
Command
stuff.
back in the days. Like it was so fun.
Huh.
And then there was the Shadow Madness, like the Shadow Priest archetype. That was also super cool. And I was like, yeah, that's got to be the class I focus on. And it's the first one I got 500 wins in as a result.
Wow,
Sweet.
that's awesome.
I
I went
still
for
don't have
Warrior
500 wins
first
on
for some
anything.
reason.
Warrior.
All the charge,
Interesting.
all the weapons, very aggressive. And then found out when I learned about the meta that aggro warrior wasn't a thing, and
It
everyone was
used
playing
to be,
control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It died fast after Nax. When Sludge Belcher came out, Aggro Warrior
Oh,
died.
man.
That was like the one card that absolutely crushed the deck. Take out everything.
Yeah.
If you take out Belcher from the game, Aggro Warrior is absolutely insane. It's a disgusting deck that just doesn't let you speak before it kills you. But you add Belcher, and suddenly like Belcher heal bot, and you can't even do anything.
Yep. And Reno.
They're gonna
Man,
get
I just want to
rich.
ask you questions about Alpha now. What else changed? What else was I not around for?
Oh,
That sounds so
God.
neat.
Yeah. There's so many.
Because there's so
Young
many
Priestess,
concepts in Magic, the Gathering, that I feel like they've kind of stayed away from, and I totally get why they don't want you to be able to make the other player discard cards or steal cards from them, because it is a frustrating feeling. But there are so many different concepts like that that are really neat that I
Like in
wonder
two.
if they experimented with before, and then we're like, no, people don't like this. People get really angry when this happens.
They got pretty. I know Illidan got the biggest change. I mean, you probably know that, but like he used to be Battlecry. Both players discard 3 cards and draw 3 cards. Illidan used to
Whoa.
basically make both players discard their hand basically and redraw. The thing is, if you had no cards in hand, you discarded nothing, and they did.
Right.
Whoa.
And you redrew 3.
Because
So like,
Warlock has a
as
lot of discard stuff.
Dang.
Right, so the idea was, I'm going to play a discard deck, and that's going to be there, and it's going to not only discard my stuff, which I might not need, but it's also going to punish them at the same time and give me a new hand. So Druid's holding on Force of
Dang.
Nature Savage Roar, you're like,
And it's
nope,
gone.
you're not pulling it off.
That's how you balance Druid.
See,
Honestly,
but that would
though,
make Illidan an actual playable card.
Don't even go there. Don't even. They change the stat line so often, it's not even fair. Poor guy
Well,
went from
Alpha
6,
was like
6 to
that, like
7,
every day,
7.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't around in the internal ones. Like, I didn't see the entire picture. But like Druid, like you see Force of Nature Savage Roar right now, and it looks kind of gross. The burst they pull off. I'm sure you've heard about the Alpha Druid and how broken it was. But in a
No,
nutshell,
I don't know. Tell me.
Well, anyway,
idea.
Force of Nature was 5 mana, and Savage Roar was 3. Savage Roar was it 2? Might have been 2. But anyway, the combo was like a total of 7 or 8 mana. But Starfall could hit your face. Wrath could hit your face. Bite gave you 6 attack. Claw gave you 3. Savagery dealt, your attack to all enemy minions, which basically meant you had a Blade Flurry. So you Bite for 6 attack, you Savagery for 2, and you wipe like 6 damage off the board. It was like the most ridiculous thing, right? And Blizzard had to just tone them down so much that they basically kept only one thing in the arsenal of Druid that kept bursting, and that's the Force of Nature Savage Roar. And what's funny is that to this day, the only reason the class is viable is because that combo exists, or Savage Roar exists in the first place. And that's just a remnant of absolutely poor balance initially that they had to tone down instead of redesigning the entire class from the ground up. It was really sad to see that they never really got the Druid they wanted out of it. You can tell they're putting so many beasts out. Like it's...
Yeah, they're trying to give it something else.
Yeah, they're trying. It's tough.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of them want to give each class a flavor, kind of like its own, and they probably have an idea of what it should be. Like you said, with Priest, giving them a lot of things to take away and control other people's minions and other people's decks seems to be their flavor. Hunter seems to be very aggressive. It's never really gotten out of that archetype.
Yeah, they even when they're playing mid range, they're still sort of on the fast side, right? Like the hero power alone, I think supports it too well to change it at this point.
The hero power kind of almost gives you the clue of what the class is meant to be, what they're meant to do.
Yeah.
But when you say that about Illidan, it makes a lot more sense with the warlock abilities and their card abilities.
Oh my gosh,
it would have fit in so well.
Yeah, it's more of a demon, right? Thematically based on Doomguard and based on all the drawback things. Like, what's the drawback of Illidan right now? There's pretty much none.
Everything.
Really. Yeah, he's just so bad to play, right? But I guess him being on your board is the drawback. Like, there's no Battlecry discard cards, but Battlecry get BGH'd or do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Poor card.
So Noxious, what do you think are some of the biggest issues that Hearthstone players face?
Wow.
Besides some of the stuff that we've
that's
already
a wide
covered.
open.
All right.
This is super big.
Yeah, that's very vague.
Okay,
like
how
maybe-
about budget
maybe
players? What do the
yeah.
budget players have to face that is...
Yeah, what's some of their biggest gates of entry as far as succeeding on ladder? Let's just put it that way. We'll put it in that vein.
All right, so succeeding on ladder, I mean, a lot of people do legend runs with almost nothing. Like, the problem is I feel like it all comes down to experience. Like, you have people who start a new account within a week of not even paying anything. They take Zoo, and they take it to legend, So getting to legend or winning, it's mostly experience they're running into as an issue. But the barrier to even get the experience you need, like, you need to even play with those cards in the first place to know how to counter them. I feel like not being able to play Control Warrior makes it so you don't even understand it. Like, it's so hard to understand how like the weaknesses and the strengths and the upsides, the downsides of a deck until you've actually tried to handle it yourself and pilot it. Like, you have no idea what it's like.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's really I think one of the biggest issues as a new player is you never get that, I get to do what I want and maybe get better, because you never have the cards. So it's a very big learning, I guess, the learning curve. It's a very long one, and you don't get it if you don't pay at this stage. So Blizzard, I'd love if sometimes they had like an open game mode of sorts. Like, I get Tavern Brawl. That's kind of their shot at casual players. You get to play with anything sometimes. Like, some weeks you just you get to use all the cards you want. But it doesn't always line up.
I get that, because I always said to people, well, I've seen, professional players start a brand new free-to-play account and show how they used only basic cards and classic cards and got to Legend. But I didn't really think about exactly what you said, is that before that, they had their own account with all the cards, played all the decks, knew them all inside and out. So when it came to coming up against them and countering them, they knew them really well as well. But if you've never played Freeze Mage, you don't know how it works. Excuse me, you don't know how it works. If you've never played Pageant Warrior or Miracle Rogue, you don't know how it works inside and out. So it is a completely different... It's not just the cards. It's not like, well, anyone can take Zoo to Legend.
Yeah. Would you say it then, if we could like summarize this point in like one sentence, that it ultimately comes down to budget players not having the cards, all of the cards, in order to gain the experience in what to anticipate?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest deals. I mean, motivation to learn, yada yada, is another big thing, and also the assumption that you can just make any deck. Like, let's say you look, and this is gonna be a bad example, but you look at Warsong Commander, the post nerf one, and you want to make a charge deck, right? You're like, oh, I'm gonna give +1 attack to all my charge guys. Like, how does a new player figure out that that card is bad, right? Like, that's
Right.
it takes quite a bit of game knowledge in card games or any game. Like, just understand the game system itself to figure it out. And making that call, I think, takes a lot more experience than people assume it does. Like, people who are used to the game, no issue. Like, they already know what's good, what's bad. But that's not the case for everybody.
Yeah,
I
like,
don't
even
think that's
just
such a
net
bad
decking.
thing, though, right? Because that's how everybody starts. You don't automatically start a game and know everything about it. There is that learning curve of slowly learning eye for an eye is bad, and I think that's a good thing for people to figure it out by playing things and figuring out, like, by seeing what other people are playing against them, what are good cards and what are bad cards. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think the people need to learn through experience that
Oh, yeah,
the
they
decks
do.
that they make are good or bad.
Yeah, and I think it ultimately then would then come down to the other issue I think players come with is the lack of time in order to
Time.
commit to
Yeah.
figuring out if these things are experience is worth it or not worth it. Like, to
Yeah.
play this card.
Like, is this
play
card
thing.
good? Should I actually even try to make a Crazed Alchemist deck? Right? Like, that's a big, like, it's a crazy question, but, like, can I try to make an Alchemist deck, like Crazed Alchemist and Rogue? Like, I use the Raptor. That way I can either flip my eggs or copy the Death Rattles. Like, how much can I push that deck concept and make it work before I realize it just doesn't?
It doesn't, yeah.
Yeah. Like, how long?
But then
So
there are
it's
those
time.
people who, when it came out, people were like, the patron warrior. People didn't even see that coming until someone said, I'm going to try and make a deck around this. So all of these different types, well, maybe some of the pros saw it coming, but a lot of the different ones that I watched, when they were reviewing cards, they were like, oh, this one's not that great, and these ones aren't that great, until somebody kind of goes outside the box and goes, I'm going to try and make a deck around this. You never know what's possible, what's going to happen, and then all of a sudden, the deck's everywhere, and it's on the top of the ladder.
Yeah.
That's what happened with Secret Pally.
Did it really? I think. Well, I mean, it was kind of a trump card. I think the Challenger, and that not everybody
Yeah.
saw it coming. But like, I wasn't too sure when I saw it. It's the type of card you see and you're like, I can't figure out if filling up my deck with garbage is gonna make this worth it, right?
Yeah.
But then as soon as you play with it, you're like, yeah, it has symmetrical stats, right? Like it's a 6/6,
Right.
it's a 7/7 on boom, it's an 6/6 on Tyrion. Like none of them has less health than they have attack. They just don't die. Like it doesn't matter
Right.
what it does. It could read something else entirely that's a good ability, and it would probably work as well. Which is really what Paladin does nowadays. It's so scary to watch them play.
Yeah. So what do you think about the crafting system, Noxious? Like, that's kind of the broad question, but would it be a good idea to change crafting costs of certain sets in the future?
I think that's gonna be done. Like I have no inside information. Like I'm not making. Oh yeah, Ben Bro told me they're gonna lower the cost, but I think at some point they're gonna have to do it. Just because you look at the older cards and some of them aren't even that good in the first place. Again, though, it comes down to the same issue we talked about, which is how do I do that without making my older players feel like they got shafted by the deal? If they crafted, I don't know, Leroy Jenkins at full cost, how do I make them understand that we need to make sure that the Azure Drake is more accessible, that the slams of the world, I don't even know if slam is a basic, I forget. I think it's a common, but like all the cards that people
Slam's a
need in
common.
their classic set, how do we make people understand that we need to give that out without, I mean, alienating the older player base? I don't know how many people would really react negatively to it. I'm not sure. It's a tough
I
one.
know a lot of people, whenever something's kind of handed to people in World of Warcraft, there'd be a big hue and cry over it. But I do
Right.
think you're right. It's like the 1%. They might be really loud, but they don't
They don't do anything.
represent, the majority of the player base. What do you think? I just thought of this now, but but they probably thought of it before. What do you think about them selling a deck? Like being able to buy
A starter
a
deck.
pre-made deck. Like they
We
made
always
Patron
thought that
Warrior
was gonna
with
be
all of
in-
these different cards, and then just we're like, you can buy this Warrior deck.
Yeah, I think it was always something we assumed they would do at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I
it's just
think-
a little odd that it hasn't come through yet. I mean, I assumed they would at least sell, say, all the classic Warrior cards for a certain price, or all the Warrior commons, all the Warrior rares. I don't know. It sounds kind
Like
of
I
reasonable.
can see them making like a pre-constructed deck that's not amazing, but has like, because like every card game does this, right? Like every
Yeah.
card game has a starter pack that has like one dope card. Like I'm going back to my Yu-Gi-Oh days, okay? So
Oh, God.
excuse me, but like you go into playing a Seto Kaiba deck or a Yugi deck. It's like you're gonna get this card. It's a super rare Blue Eyes White Dragon. Like this card's good, and then they're gonna give you a couple cards that are good, that are at the epic level and the rare level, that are pretty critical to building decks as a whole, not just for this deck. And then as well with the spells and the traps. But then they also fill the deck with a bunch of garbage cards that you're never going to want to play outside of teaching somebody how to play the game with a starter deck. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's like, why don't they just do that with classic cards and just say, hey, this deck has 25 cards that you get for this price, and 5 of the cards are cards you already have in it, but they make the deck work. So because they're classic, or they're basic.
Their core
cards,
cards,
like
yeah,
Fireballs on a mage
the
deck
core
or something.
cards
Yeah.
really make the deck, and that's what's interesting is that most of the decks that work because of the core cards. Like Blizzard has thought
Yeah.
of, because eventually you'll have like a saturated card pool. They've thought, of course, of rotating formats. You just rotate older sets out of relevance. The ranked suddenly you can't play classic, or whatever it is. But then you look at all the basic cards in each class, and like if those get rotated out, like I can't play with Kill
There'd
Command,
be
I
nothing
can't play with
left.
Backstab.
Yeah,
I can't,
mages
like,
have nothing.
Right, what do
Yeah.
I do, right? I mean, some classes will do better, like Shaman, because suddenly they lose all the garbage that they didn't even need in the first place, and they get all the good new tools.
Everyone
and you
else sucks, and Shaman has good tools.
Well, that's pretty much what I think is going to happen if you rotate everything. Like, Warriors lose good weapons. I guess they could keep Death's Bite, but they lose War Axe. They have to sub it out for the King's Defender all of a sudden. and
Cursed
they're
Blade.
Dude, you're laughing now. Just wait. One day.
No,
it'll be
Chan
good.
Man had one on their episode. They did a Face Warrior that had ran 2 Cursed Blades in it, and they went like 10 and 2.
Oh, it's
Like,
very
holy
good, man.
crap.
It's a very good card in that deck.
It's really good if you can make your opponent equip it.
Oh, man.
Blingtron.
Blingtron. Blingtron Fireball. I am sorry.
This is a
is that the way
free
it goes?
Fire 9 mana Fire Blast.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
Oh, I think that if they made it so that you could only purchase these pre-made packs once, then they wouldn't have to worry about people, farming them for dusting legendaries and getting other things.
What if they paired it with like a hero? Like with Magni or
Oh,
Illyria
that's such
or
a good idea.
something.
Like when they sell the
'Cause
new
then you get
heroes.
something purely aesthetic that's just totally cosmetic.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Good idea.
Bundling up the portraits with what you could call like an innkeeper's
deck.
bundle or whatever. Like I don't even care the name
Yeah.
to give it, as long as it's something that lets you start up, and it also gives them a way to push those portraits out at the same time. Because
Those portraits are cool.
They are, but nobody wants them besides me. It feels.
Yeah. You just
I wanted
can't
the
justify
medieval
it
one,
unless
like,
you
right
kind of
away.
have money to burn.
Yeah, that's pretty much
Yeah.
what it is, really. Like if you're heavily invested in the game and you play it all day, then sure, right.
Then
Or if
yeah.
you just want to look
Here's
cool.
$10 Blizzard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to the different expansions, sort of the way it works in Magic is that you still have your core cards that stay around and keep being brought out over and over again because they're the core cards, and then you have different expansions that go away. So it would be like nobody plays TGT cards anymore, or nobody plays Goblins versus Gnomes cards anymore. But all the core cards that Blizzard had decided were like each class's core cards would stay throughout the different changes.
So you push out Classic and say GVG, but you keep, or like Nax, and you just keep the basics and the rest.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I think we're kind of far away from that because it hasn't been around long enough and there isn't enough cards
Yeah,
for us to be
right.
looking at that for a long time.
I
But
think the next set though could push us there. You know, like the
Close
next
enough.
full expansion would be very close to that point.
You think so?
140 cards. 140 cards is. I mean, it depends what
look at
type
the-
of diversity they're bringing there, right? Like, did they release another TGT or did they release another GVG? Like, it depends on what.
Yeah, that's
impact it
exactly
has,
right. Yeah.
Well, maybe
Like-
that's their intent, to give us a lot of cards and a lot of interesting cards, but in the end it shakes down that not a lot of them are actually viable.
Yeah.
That sounds
So-
absolutely amazing. Thank you. I just want to keep playing Hearthstone now.
You're-
That's
But then
depressing.
you get an adventure,
Just give me all the really crappy
right?
cards
and
and
the
we can play.
adventure just turns everything on its head.
Well, that's what it's supposed to do. Like, if you look at NotRobMay, right?
Yeah.
Like, it took a mechanic that was around in the game as a baseline, but it was never good. Death Rattle. Like, it's not that it was bad, it's that it was never good. Like, it never wanted you like to play those cards. Would you ever bother going with Death Rattle cards because they're Death Rattle? You played them because they had, somewhat, they were the best in their slot, is why you'd play them. There was nothing better.
Yeah.
And then Nax came out and said, now suddenly you want to play Death Rattle because we're giving you
Right.
a broken Undertaker. And things are changing because of that. And if they
Same with
bring the
Discover,
same
though.
idea, yeah, exactly. If they keep bringing up cards that change the way you play the game and make you want to deck build differently in adventures, which is what they tend to do, then suddenly, rotating cards isn't necessary.
I think we definitely need some more Discover cards. Those things are amazing.
Those are
Like,
super
that
fun.
keyword is so
Yeah.
cool. All right, so I just crunched the numbers. In case you guys are wondering, if you were to have duplicates of every card that's a non-legendary plus every legendary card, you would have 1,123 cards in your collection. That is having doubles of every epic, every rare, every common, all your basics, and then every legendary.
That's quite a bit.
That's our total card pool right now.
That's a lot.
And before you say, well, that's not how many unique cards, and that's why Blizzard's not doing it, blah, blah. Well, I think Blizzard's looking at this total number. I don't think they're looking at the unique card number because there are so many cards outside of Reno decks that you're going to need two ofs in. Like, even my Freeze Mage deck has, double Ice Lances, double Frostbolts, double Secrets for Ice Barrier, Ice Block, and double Scientists, along with a few other double cards like Arcane Intellect to draw, and it still runs Reno.
That's
Super
true.
JJ made that list. It's really
Yeah.
good. But you have to have so many cards and doubles in your collection to be viable on the ladder for the most part.
Consistency, right? Like, the more you double,
Yeah.
that's it's just the idea is the more you, I guess, want to be consistent in your game plan, the more doubles you're gonna need. Like, where's
you're
your
saturating
second
your deck
flame
with what
imp,
you want.
right? Like, you don't have an alternative to flame imp if you really want to play a 3-2 for 1 that puts a lot of
Right.
pressure.
Right. Exactly. So let's move on to another question we have here. Oh, this is something that I randomly thought up the other day that ends up, the more I mull over it, it kind of works. But what do you think if Hearthstone took cards that are within maybe basic or classic set and selected key cards that were maybe common or rare rarity and kept their rarity but moved them into being a card that you get in basic?
So they stay epic for the sake of arena, let's say.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
when it comes to owning them, all you have to do is have the game, right?
Yeah.
I think they'd have to gate that kind of progress behind some kind of PvE system, like an adventure mode. I wouldn't
What
necessarily
about
mind it.
progression of heroes of
sure,
playing
why
them?
not? Like that's what I'm saying. They'd have to gate it somehow in order for you to have the
Sure.
progress to get it. But it always
Yeah.
comes back to like the player base that's already been there. But if you ignore those guys, then yes, I mean that seems like it would make sense. If there's cards that are so core that you absolutely have to get them in a set where there's nothing else you want, I could see Blizzard do that. But ultimately, they do want to sell card packs, right? Like they want
Yeah.
you to buy those packs in order to get the cards you need. And the way the system works with crafting is I think that's where the rework would have to go, right? Because then
Yeah.
suddenly, if you modify the crafting system, then you fix the problem entirely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the real issue is the crafting system is so diluted and you don't get enough dust from stuff, or maybe they just do it simply like where everything crafting to craft a card stays the same, but like when you disenchant commons, you just get more.
Yeah, the fact
I mean,
that it's
maybe
5
that's
instead
it.
of... Yeah, I don't understand why it's not 10. Like
10 or
because
20 or
everything
something
is
silly.
like everything is 25% of its actual value, right? Like you disenchant
Right.
a legendary, you get 400. Crafting one is 1600. Common costs 40 to craft, and it only gives you 5, so it's like 1/8. Why does
Yeah,
why does
it's
that
awful.
jump happen?
Because
the
you
same
get
thing
way
with,
more of them out of packs than you get
Goldens,
anything
too.
else,
Sure,
probably.
you get more out of pack, but that's the whole idea: is how do I convert them to something relevant before I open 7 packs to craft one wisp? Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but it takes me a long time to craft
Yeah.
one wisp if I want it.
Right.
I hear
So
you.
it's just, I think the commons should maybe get bumped up to 10 dust, honestly.
At a bare minimum. I mean,
10 is fine, I think.
like
you get so many of
giving them even 5 more dust or 1 more dust is honestly like astronomical implications that Blizzard has to weigh, because getting more dust to the players doubles and triples and quadruples depending on how many of those you're pulling.
Yeah, it's
So
insane.
like, yeah, it does stack, and Blizzard is most definitely going to be weighing this behind closed doors. Like, this is something that you just can't discuss with the community, because the community will go ballistic. So I really appreciate that Blizzard keeps a lot of their stuff under wraps, just because if they even gave you a little bit of a leak of what they might be doing, people just go crazy and hate on your game. Like,
Yeah,
"No,
well, it's the
Blizzard
business
hates us."
issue, right? It's always the business
Yeah.
issue is, oh, this is a game, I play it because it's fun. But then the business side of things says, we can't just give everything
They
away.
just tell you.
Like,
But they
it'd
do
be so
want a lot of
fun.
people to play their game. And if people are starting to play their game and pick it up and then find it too intimidating to get a card pool that's viable and then just stop and never play again, that's also a problem as well.
Yeah. Based on the sale,
Okay.
though, I want to say just the fact that, like Christmas, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do on the 25th or the 24th. I have no idea. They might do
Yeah.
something. But based on the sale that we saw, which was like the Winter's Veil gift, instead of making like a blanket gift to everyone for the holiday season, they had a sale, a small one at that, right? It gives you like 25% more packs. Not like double the packs, just 25% more.
Yeah.
Means
Yeah.
they don't need to liquidate the packs. Like,
Yeah.
they don't need to sell more. They're already flooded in purchases. They're like, we could give them a small discount, but we don't have to start giving stuff away, because we're like, people are just going to wait for that double pack time. Whereas 25% is like, yeah, I already wanted to buy them. I'm happy I get more, but I may not go out of my way to, dump at $200 that otherwise wouldn't have. So they're fine sales-wise, I think.
All right, so we'll do one more question before we go to our email. And let's say I'll let you choose. So we talk a lot about on the show about having goals. What would you say are some of the most important goals for you as like putting yourself in the shoes of a new player? And then another question that you could choose from would be, what do you think like we can do with Discover in the future to help budget players kind of improve?
You mean get
like-
better as players, or improve
Yeah,
their
get better as
collection?
players
Okay,
using
sure.
just that command mechanic.
That mechanic alone, I mean, will allow them to try out all sorts of cards that they otherwise, of course, don't have access to. Like, you could make a card that says, I don't know, each player discovers a random legendary minion and puts it in their hand, right? So you get the minion on that turn in your hand, but, if the card costs 6 to play, then the minion that gives you that legendary, then you can't play that, say, Ragnaros that you got. But then the opponent has the initiative. So there's a drawback there, but you get to play with that legendary that you picked. You get to make a choice. Am I going to take Lord Walker Cho or Millhouse, or am I going to pick Deathwing? Or am I going to pick Deathwing over, say, Emperor Thorson? Some people would, but that's a mistake for the most part. So there's a lot of ways to use Discover to improve the player experience and maybe get them to think about combinations more than they otherwise would not spot. So I think overall that would be a really cool
I
mechanic
want
to
that
explore in the
card.
future.
I want Discover a random
Of
legendary
course.
minion.
Yeah,
Everybody
who
does.
wouldn't, right?
It should be a legendary spell, a neutral
Yeah.
spell.
Yeah, so I kind of
Well,
like
it could be
the
attached to a
idea.
minion, right? It doesn't have to be a spell.
Like a 6 mana 5/3 or 6 mana 5/4, something mid-sized that you can't just like. Not 2 mana is too easy because then you play Doctor
Like the
Boom
Arcane
right
Ethereal.
afterwards. Yeah,
Or the Arcane Conjurer or whatever. It's 6/3 for 5.
exactly. I think it's a good stat line. You go along those lines, and you're probably good to go. You could also make it so it summons the minion directly for both of you.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So
There you
You
go.
both play World of Warcraft, right?
I
used to,
have,
yeah.
You know Chromie?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Chromie would be perfect for this.
Nah, I think
Put
she'd
her
be
out
better-
and discover a
Really?
random
You could do
legendary
something way
minion.
crazier with
Yeah,
Chromie,
Chromie
probably.
could be so fun if, say, you go like there was an example. It's funny that you bring Chromie up because I was approached by what's his name, Full S Games, I think. He makes YouTube
Oh, yeah.
videos with like a
He's
mod
really
for
cool.
Hearthstone, and he asked me to make a Chromie card that was somewhat balanced, yada yada, and I was like, yeah, like Battle Cry. The idea was that you would basically get the last spell you played and the last minion you played, like copies of them in your hand, so you get to replay those. So it's like a
time
7 mana.
rewinder.
Right.
Sure. You just like get those cards that you already played back in your hand. It's like, and it's super aesthetically pleasing. Like I wish we had more.
It's
of
really
these
intuitive,
cards. Right?
Because it doesn't punish you in any way.
Sure, it's very easy to pull off, to understand even. Like for it to click, it doesn't take too long.
Right.
And I feel like there's so much room for those types of mechanics in Hearthstone. That's what I love about it. Is the potential of this game is beyond anything Magic will ever pull off. I mean, Magic is more complex. Magic has cool mechanics. But as far as the medium that we're using, like the digital
Right.
medium, I don't think you can remotely come close to that with tabletop card games.
Right. Right.
Like those people who were making the paper Hearthstone cards and playing them.
it just
Yeah.
doesn't work.
I just feel for them when Discover came out.
Oh
Like,
my
what
god. Rest in
do
peace.
you do?
You have like an extra deck on the side. You pick 3 random
Yeah.
guys, and you have to separate them by class and cost and like everything.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have like
Rip.
a 3-cost pile. You have a legendary pile. You have a pile for everything.
Welcome to the exhibit. Hang on, I gotta spend 10 minutes getting this Discover mechanic ready.
This is horrible. Shuffle your deck. Oh god, which the 1,000 cards? Oh, this is horrible.
Oh, it's
Oh
so
man. Yeah.
funny.
Just no. you
And how
can't-
do you do
can't
the
play
4
Discover
times? Like,
cards.
do you shuffle 4 copies of it if it's a class card?
Oh my
Because you get 4 times the
gosh.
chance of getting a class card in Discover.
Too
yeah,
much.
those guys.
Noxious, make it
These
stop.
guys ruined.
All right, let's take an email. Eve, why don't you read our email for us?
All right. Let me scroll down. Hi guys, Gabriel here. Is this our patron?
This is our patron.
I'm a budget player more by choice than necessity. I don't lack the cash to buy cards, but I don't want to solve problems simply by paying my way out of them. I don't have much time to play, so I've been concentrating on getting really familiar with a single archetype that is cheap and gets lots of games into my playtime, like Face Hunter. I'm running a version without Leroy and with 3 traps. Explosive, bear, snakes. Okay, Leroy is kind of old school Face Hunter.
He's running without it, yeah. That's fine.
I hit rank 11 for the last 2 seasons on limited time, but this season it's been a hard grind to even get up to 14. The rise of Reno has contributed, but I'm finding that even non-Reno decks seem harder to beat, possibly because they are shifting to tougher early defense to be able to last into the late game in case a Reno gets dropped on them. So here's my question. What would be cheapish alternatives to Face Hunter that may do better in the current post-LOE metagame? Say max of 1 legendary. And we mentioned Zoo earlier on
Yeah,
in
last
the
episode.
show. In the show as well, and yeah.
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah.
the first thing that comes to mind. Cheap,
Yeah.
still aggressive, like Face Hunter. Kind of more options with your.
I mean, I want
Hero
to say
power.
Secret Paladin, as boring as it is. Like, I feel like Secret Paladin gets a lot of flack, but it is one of those decks that will work. And what's interesting is you can also spin it a little bit to include, 2 to 3 Murlocs, put an anything can happen in there, because it gives you that turn 10, extra, say,
Burst.
12 to 14 to 16 damage, depending on what you get. And sometimes that might be enough. Druid, like mid-range, even aggro shaman. What are we talking about? Aggro shaman.
Aggro
should
Shaman has
have to be the
no
best one, right?
legendaries in it.
Yeah,
there's
they do
0.
have 2 Doom Hammers, but yeah, that's not even legendary. So if he was open to 1 legendary in the deck, then
It's kind of
2
the new
epics.
version of Face Hunter, to be honest.
Yeah.
oh
it
yeah,
is
I
better
played
than
it
Face
and
Hunter
it
was
was
ever.
It's better and more consistent.
Face Hunter.
It's an actual orc. It's not a half ogre, half orc.
Yeah. It's funny
Like
though because
Rexar.
Face Hunter.
Wow,
like,
you
the funny
talking
thing is
down
that-
Rexar?
Yeah,
Rexar's a half ogre.
he's bad.
You're just like
Half-blood.
insulting him.
I'm not insulting him. I'm stating a fact. It's his genesis.
I hate him.
Sorry,
I hate that
what
hero
were you
so
saying,
much.
Noxious?
Sorry.
Yeah, like he's sorry, right? Or happy feast of Wintervale, and then you hear it's like that kill command sound. Like that sound just it hurts me whenever I hear
So
it.
demoralizing.
Do you hate him enough not to play him?
Yeah, I have Illyria just because her emotes don't tilt me. It's funny how much the audio. No, but it's funny. Like if somebody BMs me with Illyria and kills me with double kill command, quick shot, arcane shot, Wolf Rider, I don't give a crap. But the moment it's
Especially
Rexar,
when they emote you with a greetings. It's like, hello, Wanderer.
yeah, like I don't mind
Oh,
it.
that's so nice.
It's so funny how I feel like Rexar is just a dumb brute. Like somebody playing that has to have an IQ of 40. It's like it's just a human thing, right? It's just the gut reaction to the character itself, because that's the only interaction I get with the guy. It's just the
Rexar
face
needs to
of
be a
that dude.
Murloc.
I'll see if you can figure this one
kills
out. This
me.
is what makes me go untilt.
Go.
Aha!
Oh.
Oh no, you're out of it. Yeah, you literally can't win with that.
Good old Antonitis. Ah!
That makes me see red.
Oh,
This
man.
is actually
Old
one of the
Miracle.
reasons that I picked Warrior for a while, because I love that Hellscream goes, I choose death.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he actually
exactly.
just he just honorably gets out of it.
Seppuku.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like, you've beaten me, good job, whatever. But Hellscream is like, yeah, I just want to die.
Masterful.
I'd rather
I
die.
concede.
I'll
Or,
kill myself rather than let you win.
yeah.
Yeah, like you can't compliment the guy who just smorked you for 70 turns. Like, oh wait, what am I saying?
Yeah.
3 turns. Like you just can't do that. it's just
That's if you're playing Shaman.
it doesn't feel right. But like it's funny the way that you mentioned Shaman is a better face hunter, right? Because it absolutely is. And face hunter was never the best face deck. Like hell, face priest is better than face hunter at
You're like Mech Priest.
killing people fast. No, just like face priest with Wolf Riders, Arcane Golem, because they have Mind Blasts. They have Shadow Bombers.
Oh my
Like,
gosh, yeah.
can you imagine a world in which, you have a class like, Hunter that has those tools? You can't, because they're gonna break the
'Cause
the
it'd be
game
broken.
entirely. And Shaman basically has Mind Blast. They basically have Shadow Bombers. They have all those things with all the good stuff that makes an aggro deck viable. And when you face off
Nobody was
against
doing
aggro
it.
hunter as aggro shaman or as aggro priest, you always win. They never outrace you. The only thing they do is win the long games against mid-range decks because of that hero power. So that's
Yeah,
the one thing
exactly.
that's been keeping them at the top for a while. But now shaman's like, yeah, no, this is not gonna like you can't win anymore. It's over. Like the Murloc
Because
guy,
everything
like
goes over
Finley,
taunt.
It's crazy. Everything just smorks you.
Yeah.
Give you a better hero power, yeah. And everybody wants the Druid, right? Helps make
Oh,
your
man.
Doomhammer even more excessive.
Yeah.
So
well,
nasty.
it gives you what is it?
6 damage
Instead of
for
4, it's 6, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
And then if you can pull that off with a rock biter, instead of 10, you're doing 12.
I mean, people people don't realize just how big Finley was overall for the game, I think. Because it really makes,
Finley's
like,
so
aggro
good.
priest is a laughable concept until it gets one more card like Mind Blast, until it gets one more card like Shadow Bomber, and then suddenly it's the new toxic deck of the
If it could do
year,
something
right?
about its hero power, like
Yeah.
more consistently than a Finley, then it's GG. Like,
Yeah, good shadow,
That
like
deck
a
is
2-drop
so
that gives
good.
you a shadow form in your hand. Like if I have a 2-drop that does
Yeah.
Dark Peddler things, or
oh
Death
my gosh,
Rattle,
Dark Peddler
become
and
shadow
Priest?
form. Yeah, anything like that, just gives you a shadow form, so you don't have to put it in your deck. It's never a top deck. Like it's never just a 3-cost card. I don't know. I feel like Priest is on the verge of a breakthrough, but we'll have to see what Blizzard
It's
wants
really
to give
good
them.
right now, and it only got 2 cards from LOE that just make it really good, right? It's got Museum Curator and Entomb, and that just like you don't even need an end game. You just take your opponent's end game.
That's
And then,
so priestly. That is
Entomb
so
going back to
priestly.
alpha.
I will beat you in the face with your own deck.
Yeah, it's like taking
Alright, so
somebody's
let's try to-
fist and putting them in their face. You're like, why are you beating yourself up?
Stop hitting yourself.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right,
so
so
bad.
let's-
So I
let's,
think our
answer
answer is
his
Zoo.
question.
Is our answer Zoo or
I say
Shaman?
mech shaman, maybe druid or zoo. Those are kind of my 3 top picks. Those would have to.
My
be
other
them.
top pick would actually be Aggro Druid if you actually get those
Yeah.
epics in your collection.
Right. They have a
So,
lot,
and then the
though.
other thing is if you have a desire to like learn the game and like trickier mechanics, Patron's still pretty good, and it only uses realistically one legendary outside of a adventure, which is Grom.
That's true.
I mean, you could put something else. So, like, if you have Grom and you want to give it a test spin, Patron's awesome. And an Oil Rogue is still good. The problem is the legendaries in it are pretty much clutch, and you have to have them. You can't play it without it. It's like Thalnos and Van Cleef. You pretty much have to have.
Yeah, you could probably get away without Van Cleef, but it's going to be a rough
I was going to say,
ride.
Van Cleef, I don't even see that much.
Well, Van Cleef is in every oil list I've looked up.
Yeah,
so
nowadays it kind of is. Just because it's a free win.
Necessary.
And especially when you play the miracle list, right? I don't know if you've been toying around with those, like kind of oil miracle lists right now.
Mm-hmm.
The toughest decks I've ever seen to play
bad.
ever. They're so difficult to play.
Yeah.
So if you pull it off, you're gonna be an amazing player at the end of it.
Yep, so I don't know if I'll actually put this on the show notes. So, Gabriel, I'll actually, instead of putting this in the show notes, I will send it to you. And if you're listening and you're like, hey, I would like to see the list, I actually have a full breakdown of what the meta snapshot is from Tempo Storm this week. I basically just took that and put their ordering together. And then I just put out on the side, like, how many legendaries there are and epics there are outside of an adventure. I put up an actual count. Next to all of the decks. So if you're curious about what you want to build and like what epics and legendaries, I can't give you specifics. You just go to the website for that. But I'll email this to you if you want it. Just email the show.
For the aggro shaman, what is the optional legend?
What is the optional legend? I think it's Thalnos.
Well, I mean, you have to have Finley, and Thalnos as a possible second. You have to have Finley. You can't not have it.
Right.
Yeah.
But Thalnos as a secondary one is probably an amazing inclusion, although you can probably get away without it. That's the beauty.
Yeah, that's why I put like 0 to 1. You know what I mean? So some of these are like, if you're really thinking and you have it, go for it. But some of them I've included are just like, this list plays Sylvanas and it's kind of slow. You don't have to have it. So.
Yeah, I don't have Thalnos yet, and he's never been like on the top of my list just because he's kind of a boring card.
He's boring, but he's so OP. That's the fun. That's the thing. The thing is that every deck that should run Thalnos but doesn't is like 50% worse. It's so silly how that one card just makes or breaks a rogue deck, for instance.
Yep. Huh. We talked about that actually on our last show.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that's pretty much it for our show today. Noxious, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Likewise.
It was tons of fun talking to you. I hope we can get you back on the show again sometime.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah,
why not? Hit me up with a schedule.
Why not? Yeah.
I'll do
okay.
it.
All right. We'll follow up with that for sure. All right. So, Eve, why don't you walk us through how players can get involved with our show?
Well, we appreciate whenever you leave an iTunes review because it gives us more visibility. Share us with your friends. Talk to us on Twitter. Support us on Patreon. You can play Hearthstone with us. Some of us have our Hearthstone Battle.net tags up there. You can play Destiny with me. You can request us to coach you through Hearthstone and email us some questions so that we can put them on the show and involve you in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a few other things. If you're wondering where all those links are to everything, you can see them in the show notes. We're Velen's Podcast on Twitter, Velen's Chosen Podcast on Facebook, Velen's Chosen Podcast at gmail.com is where you can send those emails. We're on patreon.com/Velen's Chosen, just like typical stuff. Our website's where you're going to find everything you need to know. You can click all the links. It's velenschosen.posthaven.com. If you go to Esports Hero, which is actually getting a lot of recognition these days for players that are using like online currency, they're like 5,000 coins. You can use our code, which is Velen's Chosen 15. And Noxious, why don't you let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/Noxious, GLHF. For Twitter, it's COL_Noxious for Complexity Noxious. And on Twitch, when I do stream, Noxious_HS.
Eve, where can people find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Finnovar, FHINNOVARR, and on Twitch as Evemartyn, EVEMARTYN. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, you can find Andrew at Andrew is Living on Twitter and BinacaFreak on YouTube. He's going to try to do some more arena stuff, I think he said. And then you can find him on Battle.net at Andrew is Live, #1973. You can find me at Instagram and Twitter at NotRob. Facebook, you can find my photography and digital stuff portfolio at NotRobMedia. My Battle.net is Twik, TWIK number 1198. You can find me on Steam if you want to play some Brawlhalla or some Rocket League. I know I play with the Hearthaholics guys a few times. My tag there is Sir Twik, SIRTWIK. I have another podcast that's kind of goofy and comedy. It's called The Maze, MAYZ. You can check us out there on iTunes, Stitcher, and RSS. That's it for me. It's it from the one and only Noxious. I even put a link to Noxious's new swag gear. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You got a new artist doing that for you, right?
Yeah, I'm not nearly talented enough to pull that off on my own. Not nearly.
That's some pretty cool stuff.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
I didn't know you had swag.
You just got it.
I just did.
Swag.
It's recent. It's a recent thing.
Merch. All right. Not all who wander on the ladder are lost, so be sure to tune in next week, and Merry Christmas.
Happy Feast of Wintervale.
Oh, wow. Happy Feast of Wintervale, champion.
Take this time to consider your past deeds.
Stop asking questions. You had your chance. Did I miss it?
I don't think we have any bloopers for this week. We were just too good. We didn't make any mistakes.